Welcome to the deep dive. The buzz around AI video generation lately has been incredible, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Models like OpenAI Sora and Google's VO2 have really captured everyone's attention.
It truly feels like we're seeing a fundamental shift.
Uh,
I mean, in how visual content is created,
hmm.
the capabilities are, frankly, groundbreaking.
And that's exactly what we're digging into today. We've gathered a range of sources, articles, analyses, even some raw user feedback to try and get a clear picture of Sora and VO2.
Right.
Our mission for you listening is really to cut through the excitement, cut through the hype, and understand what these technologies can actually do, how they differ, and, well, what kind of impact they might have.
Yeah, trying to distill the essentials.
Exactly. We want to give you the crucial insights without getting bogged down in, like, overly technical jargon.
Precisely. And we've looked at quite a few perspectives. There's Brian Solis on A Insights, some really detailed comparisons from Monica,
Mhm.
insights from Techloy, expert digital analytics video, a peek into the research via an ArcSIF paper, and even some direct reactions from a Reddit discussion.
So a real mix.
Yeah, it's a diverse set. Should give us a pretty comprehensive understanding, I think.
Okay, let's start by getting a clearer picture of what each of these models is all about. First up, Sora, and that's OpenAI's model, came out around January 2025.
That's right. The core idea is text to video. You give it a written description, a prompt, and it generates a video clip.
And the approach is kind of specific, isn't it? Like describing scene by scene.
That's a great way to put it. The sources highlight that, yeah, you need to describe each part of the video kind of in detail through those text prompts. It's not just a vague request. It's more like giving detailed instructions for each beat.
Right. Now, even with the impressive stuff we've seen, it's important to remember it has limitations currently.
Oh, for sure.
We're talking challenges with really complex scenes, um, getting the physics to look totally believable.
Yeah, consistency too.
Yeah. And keeping the image quality and spatial details consistent through the whole clip. But importantly, OpenAI is actively working on these things.
Definitely. Just like they've iterated on their other models, it's crucial to remember these things are moving targets. What's a limitation today? Well, it might not be tomorrow.
Good point. So now let's turn to Google's offering VO2. This one surfaced, what, around December 2024?
Yeah, late last year. And it also creates video from text. But the sources we looked at, they really emphasize some key differences right off the bat, especially on visual quality.
Okay, like what?
Well, the main push with VO2 seems to be achieving a genuinely cinematic look. It supports resolutions up to 4K,
4K, okay.
and it can generate much longer scenes. We're talking potentially several minutes.
Several minutes.
Yeah,
That's a big difference from Sora's current limits.
huge. The goal seems to be more towards, professional level storytelling, maybe those high-end brand campaigns,
Oh.
movie theater quality versus maybe really good HD TV, that kind of jump in detail.
And it's not just resolution and length, is it? Realism seems to be a major focus.
Exactly. The articles talk a lot about its understanding of real-world physics, how things move, the subtleties of human movement and expression, all those little details that make something feel truly authentic.
So while both are impressive, the initial vibe is maybe Sora's geared towards quicker, perhaps more creative experimental stuff, and VO2 is aiming for that polished, professional, true-to-life visual.
That seems to be the initial read, yeah, based on what they're highlighting.
Okay, so that gives us a feel for the first impressions, but let's get into the weeds a bit, the technical specs. Monica's piece had a really clear side-by-side comparison. What jumps out there?
Well, the resolution difference is pretty stark. VO2 hitting 4K, like we said, much finer detail. Sora maxes out at 1080p.
Which is still HD, but yeah, 4K is about 4 times the pixels, right?
Roughly, yeah. It leads to a noticeably sharper image.
Okay. And video length, you mentioned VO2 does longer clips.
Right. VO2 can go up to 2 minutes. Sora currently is around 20 seconds maximum. That ability for longer sequences, I mean, it just opens up completely different possibilities for storytelling.
Yeah, definitely changes the use cases. What about generation speed? How fast are they?
Interestingly, Sora seems a bit quicker on the draw there. Around 5 minutes per video based on Monica's numbers. VO2 is closer to 10 minutes.
Double the time.
But, considering the higher quality, the 4K, the longer length, that extra 5 minutes might be a totally acceptable trade-off for users needing that higher fidelity.
That makes sense. Quality takes time. What about cost? Always a factor. How do the pricing models look?
They're quite different. VO2's pricing, at least in the testing phase mentioned, was around $30 per minute of generated video,
Per minute, okay.
whereas Sora uses a subscription model, like $20 a month for basic access or $200 a month for a pro tier.
So subscription versus pay-per-use, essentially, caters to different needs.
Exactly. Occasional user versus maybe a heavy professional user.
And how easy is it to actually get your hands on these right now, or at the time of these articles?
VO2 was initially behind a Google Labs waitlist, suggests a more controlled rollout, maybe getting feedback.
Makes sense for Google.
Sora, meanwhile, was accessible via ChatGPT Plus or Pro subscriptions, so potentially a broader, easier entry point if you were already in the OpenAI ecosystem.
Okay, that lays out the core technical differences pretty clearly. Now let's talk strengths. Where does each one really shine? Monica's analysis pulled out some key capabilities. What were the standouts for VO2?
VO2's strengths really circle back to that high realism and cinematic quality. Monica emphasizes its ability to render really fine details, rich visuals, and its physics simulations seems quite remarkable.
Of physics again?
Yeah, it handles things like gravity, fluid dynamics, light and shadow interplay very convincingly. She mentions examples like water flowing naturally, light bending through it, that kind of thing.
That realistic physics is a huge differentiator, it seems.
Its understanding of cinematic techniques. Apparently, it can do smooth camera moves, adjust focus like a real lens, optimize lighting, making shots look more professional. Plus, it offers diverse visual styles, from hyper-real to, say, cartoonish.
Versatile.
And importantly, the Synthy watermark integration. That's Google's tech for labeling AI content.
Ah, yes, the watermarking. Seems crucial.
Increasingly so, yeah, for transparency and tracking.
Okay, so that's VO2 realism, cinema techniques, watermarking. What about Sora? Where does it excel, according to Monica?
So Raw's strengths seem to lean more towards creative expression and fast iteration. It appears really good at taking imaginative prompts and running with them, generating video in a wide variety of styles.
And the editing tools you mentioned earlier.
Yes, those are a big plus. Features like remix, loop, style presets, they let users tweak and refine videos directly within the platform. Streamlines the creative workflow quite a bit.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly handy for just trying things out quickly. Anything else for Sora?
It supports multiple input types, not just text. You can use images, existing videos as starting points. It can even fill in missing frames. That flexibility is great for creators. Yeah. And it's designed with social media in mind, different formats, aspect ratios, good for short-form content. And like VO2, it does have built-in safety filters for harmful content prompts.
So it really does sound like VO2 is maybe targeting that higher-end professional market, while Sora is perhaps more focused on broader creative use, social media content. Kind of lines up.
It seems that way based on the specs and features highlighted, yeah.
Now, Monica and Analytics Media also provided some really interesting head-to-head comparison tests. Let's look at those, see these strengths in action.
Yeah.
First one, tropical wetland flamingos. What did they find?
Okay, so here VO2 really impressed with its detail. It apparently rendered feather textures accurately, showed subtle color variations, the water ripples, the reflections, very realistic. Close-ups had sharp details on eyes and beaks, almost like a nature documentary.
Wow. And Sora's take?
Sora's version was described as more artistic, pleasing color balance, visually striking scene, pink flamingos, blue-green water. It also showed more variety in the flamingos' poses and movements, making it feel a bit more lively, more dynamic.
So different vibes.
Exactly. Monica noted, if you want pure realism, VO2 had the edge. But Sora maybe created a more artistically composed, visually engaging scene overall.
Fascinating trade-offs. Okay, next comparison. Cutting a tomato. This sounds like a pure physics test. What happened?
This one was pretty clear-cut, pardon pun. VO2 showed the knife cleanly slicing the tomato, avoiding the fingers. It even had realistic shadows, and the reflection of the tomato on the knife blade looked very natural.
And Sora, I have a bad feeling.
Yeah, Sora's simulation unfortunately had the knife cutting right through the finger, a clear limitation in its understanding of physical interaction at that point.
Oof. Yeah, that's a big deal.
As one Reddit user pointed out about this exact comparison, it's not just the physics. VO2 also gets the shadows right, and even the tomato's reflection. Look at that. So yeah, VO2 was noticeably more advanced there.
Definitely critical if you need any realistic object interaction. Okay, moving on. Fluid dynamics test. Apple and paint. How do they handle liquids?
VO2 again showed impressive realism. Red paint dripped onto the apple with a natural flow, stuck to the surface properly, maintained consistent thickness as it ran down. you could still see the Apple texture underneath.
Sounds convincing. Sora's attempt.
Sora had some issues. The paint seemed to dissipate unnaturally in spots, almost like mist. The flow was inconsistent, too fast here, too slow there, and sometimes it didn't seem to stick realistically. So again, for simulating fluid behavior, VO2 seemed stronger.
These direct comparisons really highlight the current differences, don't they? Last one Monica mentions, an animated character in a cozy kitchen. How did that play out?
This was more stylistic, and both showed strengths. VO2 was praised for rendering fine details, like the luster and texture of the animated girl's hair. Her facial expressions were also noted as vivid and natural.
Okay, detail focus again. And Sora.
Sora went for bolder colors, more innovative combinations, created a vibrant kitchen atmosphere with a strong sense of depth, more of a deliberate design aesthetic. Felt kind of dreamlike, like an animated film.
So VO2 nailing the realistic details even in animation. Sora pushing the artistic style.
Seems to be the pattern, yeah. VO2 on character detail realism, Sora on the overall artistic and stylistic interpretation.
Really interesting. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Brian Sardis' article on A Insights looked at the broader industry impact. How might these tools change things for, say, studios?
Soils points out a real mix for established studios. On the one hand, huge potential for cost reduction, especially in VFX and post-production. Much faster prototyping, too, generating concept visuals, storyboards, rough scenes quickly.
And new creative options.
Definitely. Complex scenes, effects that were maybe too expensive or technically difficult before, they become more feasible.
But there are potential downsides, too.
Absolutely. While big studios can adopt AI, they might face more competition from smaller, agile creators who can now make high-quality stuff on lower budgets. It could sort of level the playing field, but also creates new competitive pressures.
Interesting dynamic. What about directors? How does their role change?
For directors, AI offers better visualization tools. Helps them communicate their vision by quickly mocking things up. It could make workflows more efficient, allow faster experimentation.
But it doesn't replace the director.
So Solus emphasizes it's a tool. It augments, doesn't replace, their creative input. But directors will likely need new skills to use these AI tools effectively in their process.
Adapt and learn. Okay, actors. This feels like a really big question for people.
It is. So this talks about potential for digital doubles, for stunts, reshoots, maybe even extending careers. AI could subtly enhance performances in post.
But the job concerns are real.
Very real. Especially for background actors, maybe eventually even leads in certain productions. But on the flip side, new opportunities might pop up: voice acting, motion capture for AI characters. It's complex.
Definitely a lot to unpack there. Screenwriters. How might AI affect them?
So Wallace suggests AI could help with initial ideation, generating plot ideas, character bits, dialogue options, maybe script analysis, pacing, structure, market appeal.
But not writing the whole script.
The immediate impact seems more like a collaborative tool, enhancing the screenwriter's process, not fully automating it. That seems to be the consensus for now.
So generally, it's looking like transformation and augmentation of roles rather than outright replacement, at least near term. What about the wider industry implications Solis mentioned?
He points to the democratization of filmmaking, lower barriers, potentially letting more independent creators in, but that immediately brings up huge legal and ethical questions. Copyright, likeness rights, responsible use.
Yeah, the tricky stuff.
And we'll likely see jobs shift. Some traditional roles change, new AI-focused roles emerge, and fundamentally, as AI gets better, we might need to rethink what creativity and authorship even mean in film.
These are some really deep shifts.
Yeah.
Okay, let's pivot to some direct reactions. The Reddit discussion, those quotes Monica included, what's the vibe from people actually kicking the tires, or at least watching closely?
Well, the overwhelming sentiment on Reddit was that VO2 is currently significantly ahead of Sora. People used really strong language, head and shoulders above, not even close. Someone said VO2 absolutely mogged Sora.
Mogged, okay, strong words.
Yeah. Comparisons were made to the jump between like GPT 3.5 and GPT 4 in language models, like that level of difference.
Wow. Why such a strong feeling? What were the reasons given?
A huge point that kept coming up was Google's access to data via YouTube. Massive amounts of video. Many felt this gives VO2 a colossal training advantage, maybe even legal leverage regarding training data.
The data advantage.
Yeah. Some even suggested OpenAI should maybe rethink Sora, given Google's perceived edge in resources and data. Pretty blunt feedback.
Definitely strong opinions. Any other interesting points from Reddit?
Yeah, discussions about cost and the target audience. Is the market for AI video as big as for text reasoning AI? skepticism about Sora catching up to VO2, but also real excitement about VO2's realism and potential uses.
Okay.
Some users shared frustrations with Sora needing multiple tries, getting weird jump cuts, and interestingly, someone mentioned a local Chinese model, Hunyuan, that they felt was surprisingly competitive, maybe even better than Sora in some ways.
Oh, interesting. Other players emerging.
And Monica quoted the founder of EasyGen saying, testing Sora versus VO2 was like comparing a bicycle to a starship. Really echoes that sentiment.
Bicycle to a starship. Okay.
And that VO2 steak slicing video became a real focal point on Reddit. People were analyzing the knife physics, the steak texture, the fact the knife stayed clean. The consensus was it was shockingly good, with only tiny, almost invisible AI tells.
That steak video really became a benchmark, didn't it? So lots of enthusiasm, especially for VO2. But what about the practical challenges people are still running into? Reddit touched on those too.
Oh, absolutely. Despite the hype, there are still big hurdles. One is needing more user-friendly tools for beginners, beyond the established ones like Runway or Luma. Consistency is still a major issue, especially in longer videos. Anomalies pop up, you lack precise control.
Right.
Complex scenes, like big crowds, still really hard. Copyright is a constant concern, and hardware running these things locally needs serious power.
And character consistency was mentioned as a big one.
Huge, making sure a character looks the same shot to shot, scene to scene. That's still a major technical challenge. And you still need filmmaking skills, right? Camera work, editing. It's not just prompt and done.
Good reminder. It's amazing, but not magic yet. We're not instantly creating perfect movies. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. Comparisons, impacts, opinions, challenges. What about the governance side, the societal concerns that Arcasif paper dug into this?
Yeah, the RCIF paper synthesized a lot of discussion around Sora specifically, but the points apply more broadly. The primary concerns flagged were, predictably, the impact on creative industries, job displacement.
Right.
Also, OpenAI's shift to a for-profit model raised questions about the credibility of their safety claims, the blurring lines between real and fake content, potential for misinformation, data privacy, copyright for training data, even the environmental impact of running these huge models.
A lot of heavy concerns there. Did the paper propose solutions?
Some common suggestions came up, things like legally mandated labeling or watermarking of AI content, and boosting AI literacy education so people can better discern what's real.
Makes sense. How did people quoted in the paper assess Sora's actual quality? Was it universally praised?
No, it was mixed. Some saw it as revolutionary, others pointed out flawed physics, like we saw with the tomato,
Yeah.
or a perceived lack of true creativity, just mimicking styles. There was real concern about job losses for artists, the rise of AI content farms,
Yeah.
frustration from art students, and that recurring theme of artists' work being used for training without consent, which many view as outright theft.
That training data issue is huge.
But there were counter-arguments, too. Some believe AI won't replace true artists because it lacks genuine creativity, feelings, the human touch.
The human spark argument.
Exactly. There was also some pretty negative sentiment towards OpenAI itself being called a troublemaker and towards hype-filled AI bro posts, a general feeling that society isn't ready and the potential downsides might outweigh the benefits.
So real tension between the potential and the peril.
Definitely. Some compared it to past disruptions like cars or movies, believing morality and regulation will eventually catch up. But the specific governance challenges are tough. OpenAI's secrecy versus its profit motive, ensuring content authenticity against fakes and propaganda, the job impacts, the training data sources, the energy consumption.
And the labeling idea is that it's seen as feasible.
There was debate. Concerns about watermarks being removed, distrust in government enforcement, the slow pace of legislation versus the speed of AI development, making AI literacy and media verification skills even more critical.
So education becomes key.
Very much so. The paper also placed Sora within the typical technology hype cycle, currently at that initial innovation trigger stage. Lots of buzz, but practical applications still developing.
Right. The peak of inflated expectations might still be coming.
Could be. Overall, the paper highlighted really conflicting views on everything. Sora's creativity, its quality, whether it's desirable, its employment impact, how enforceable laws would be, whether it truly democratizes content, and whether OpenAI can be trusted.
It sounds like a microcosm of the entire AI debate.
Pretty much. An interesting analogy was made to virtual influencers, suggesting public perception might be driven more by a general feeling about AI than by specific product features.
Huh. That's an interesting thought. Did the paper offer concrete policy recommendations?
Yes, Things like AI watermarking, leveraging existing laws where possible, enhancing accessibility to these tools, not just keeping them walled off, and taking an entrepreneurial approach to regulation, trying to balance the ethical concerns with usability and innovation.
Balancing act. Okay, so bringing it all together as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the key takeaways on Sora versus VO2 right now?
Well, it seems clear both are major steps forward, but with different current strengths and maybe different target audiences. VO2 looks to have the edge currently on realism, resolution, video length, and physics simulation, aiming for that cinematic quality.
Right, the Starship.
Yeah. While Sora emphasizes creative flexibility, faster iteration, built-in editing, maybe making it more suited for experimentation, social media, and broader creative tasks. The Bicycle, perhaps, but a very advanced one with potential.
And the impact on the industry and content creation looks massive, but complex.
Absolutely. Potential for cost savings,
Yeah.
new creative avenues, but also job transformations, democratization leading to new competition, and those huge ethical and legal questions hanging over everything.
Copyright, authenticity, the future of creative work itself.
Exactly.
So as we finish up here, maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. Given this incredible pace of change we're seeing in AI video, what fundamental shifts do you anticipate in how we create, how we consume, how we even perceive visual media in the coming years?
Hmm.
And maybe more importantly, as this tech keeps accelerating, what responsibilities do we all have, creators, consumers, developers, policymakers, to navigate this? How do we balance the amazing innovation with the societal implications?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It really is. Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.